We're excited to be hanging out with our guy, Ameer Abdullah, in the studio. And Ameer, before we talk about the touchdown, and I want to get into all that, like, big news today, right? AP says we got a new man under center, Aidan O'Connell, QB1 going forward. You know, you were here with Aiden, obviously, like, last year. Like, going back through, like, this whole process, like, what have you seen from Aiden to kind of prepare him to come back into the starting lineup?
I mean, he's a pro's pro. He's a guy who, no matter if he's a starter or, the backup, he's going to be the same guy. He's very, informational. If I'm coming off the field and we just put in a new scheme or something, he'll pull me to the side and be like, hey, when we call this, we're expecting this defense. So know the weakness is here, and if you could maybe turn out this way or position yourself in the leverage that way, it may help me out to deliver you the ball. And I think that's just the mark of a great quarterback, someone who is willing to put his guys in the right place so we all can be successful. And he's always done that, no matter if he was a starter or the backup. And, I played with him as a starter last year for majority of the season. So I know he's going to be ready for the task.
AP's talked so much about just the change in Aiden just being comfortable, being more of a vocal leader, right? And I'm sure some of that is just being, a young dude who's a year older in the NFL, right? Like a year, more mature and a year more comfortable in his own skin. But like when you look at that portion of his leadership, right? Just being comfortable, like talking to guys and being vocal and like you talk about in the huddle, like this is the look, this is the expectation. Like where have you seen him grow there?
Well, the quarterback position is like being the president. It ages you really fast. That's something I've noticed in this league. A lot of young quarterbacks I've played with. And I think Aiden is someone who's jumped light years from where he was last year, even though he's in a new system. He's been thrown in a tough situation, had to learn a new offense last year. The offense is gone. Now we're in another offense, and he's picked it up really fast, mainly because, like I said, he's a guy who he wants to be great. And he leans on a lot of guys to do so. He understands that it takes everyone's 1/11th. And I think he does that, when he calls the O-line in to go over third down protection. He takes a lot more initiative, and I think he understands from being with, McDaniels last year to now Getsy this year, two different styles of coaches. He understands that the real work is about him. Not about what they're teaching him or what they're showing him. It's about how he's going to put his mark on the quarterback position. And I think he's really found a niche with just being a leader, more vocal, someone that can be kind of a pick-me-up kind of guy. And he's really been that this year.
So make me a little bit smarter, right? And you talk about Aiden having to learn a new offense, but all you guys had to go in and learn a new offense. And you look at you a year ago, right? This is now 2 offenses in 2 years. So for like just a casual fan like me, like what are the biggest hurdles in kind of understanding the nuances of 2 offenses in 16 months?
Yeah. I mean, football is football. A lot of the schemes are the same, but it's the vernacular, it's the terminology that's a lot different. Like even today, I was answering a question in meetings about like a certain landmark on the field, and I called it one thing, and the coach is typically calls it something differently. So when I was answering, he was kind of giving me like a smug look, like, what are you talking about? But I was like, oh, it's this. I used his terminology. I was like, oh, okay. We were on the same page, but we were talking about the same thing, but we were talking 2 different languages. And I think that's the biggest change, just going from one offense to the next. It's like doing away with a complete different language and picking something else, up. So, for me, someone who's been around for 10 years now, I've been in pretty much every single scheme that you can think of. I've been in the West Coast. I've been in the spread. So a lot of the schemes are the same. It's just about unlearning some language and now conditioning yourself to realize, this is how we speak here now.
You talk about being in the NFL for a decade. Found the end zone for the first time in a hot minute.
All right, man, it's true. About over a year now. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, what was it like for you to kind of get that moment, that rushing touchdown? Granted, the game was not where we wanted it to be, but just on an individual basis, be like, hey, man, we can kind of take this moment to celebrate this moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to score touchdowns in the NFL. Mm-hmm. It is, man. There's so many guys to spread the ball to, so many guys who certain plays just go their way sometimes. And for me to find end zone, get back into that groove, it felt good. It did. But at the time, I couldn't really celebrate how I really wanted to. I couldn't hop up and do any ninja kicks or anything because we were down. But I think just that drive alone, we went back and we really watched that drive after the game, and we saw how efficient we were. Of course, we were in more of a 2-minute, mode, but we can still learn a lot about, hey, that's the intentionality that we need to have every single drive, where you look at guys, they were very detail oriented, and that's how we need to bring, our energy to every single drive. Like, make sure you're getting your depth on routes, make sure you're protecting inside out. And those are things that I know a lot of guys saw and was like, wow, we're capable of executing at that level under pressure when you're tired. Imagine when you're slowing it down and actually huddling up. It'd be a lot easier for you. It's just all about intentionality.
You talk about it's not easy to score touchdowns in the NFL. Well, it's not easy to consistently run the football the way that you guys have the past 2 weeks. And you talk about finding a groove and the run game. You look at the numbers the past 2 weeks have been great, right? You go 150 plus 2 weeks ago. You're, I think, 120 on Sunday. Like, what's been the key for you guys kind of finding some rhythm in that aspect of the game?
I mean, we preach get off the ball. I think we're still a little inconsistent in that on all levels, running backs, O-line, tight ends, receivers alike. But we teach setting the tone, getting off the ball, and I think guys have answered that call. We could be a lot better consistently, like I said. But I think that's the biggest difference. Like we understand the schemes, we understand where we're trying to go with certain runs. It's all about, like, am I going to beat that guy to a spot? Because, the game of football is about leverage. It isn't about always, like, who's the better player, because I've seen some really good players, not get off the ball and they look like they shouldn't be there, So I think our guys are starting to understand, like, hey, man, if I just strain that much more, if I just sacrifice that much more, it's going to show my teammates that I care about them. It's going to show them that, hey, man, this guy's willing to go the extra mile to get that leverage that we need. Maybe I should do that the next play for him. Just returning that favor, then it just starts to compound, and next we can be looking up 7 weeks, 150 plus if we want.
I think what's crazy too, when you look at the numbers, and people forget that on that offensive line, you got two rookies, really essentially making their first 2 NFL starts in DJ and Jackson. Like, when you look at the big fellas up front, those 5, like, what stood out to you about the young guys?
Man, just the energy, just starting with JPJ. That dude he's hilarious. He loves to play football, and I want my linemen to be a little thrown off. I do, I don't want them to be completely sane people. I want them to kind of be a little crazy, and he brings kind of that old school, idea of just like, whoa, he likes to bang his head, he likes to hit people, and you see him, he's jumping on piles. You gotta be a little careful. I don't want to get any extracurricular, flags that we don't need, but that fires us up, because we see that this guy is locked in, he's ready to go, and DJ is just cool, calm, and collected. He doesn't talk much, but he's a guy who's gonna do it right every single time, and he's just getting better every week.
AP was talking about having warned JPJ a little bit about some of those late dives. Like, so for you, right, like as a vet, as a dude who's been in the NFL for a minute now, like, how do you kind of approach towing that line where you're like, hey, like, I want you to be you. I want you to be, like you said, be that wild, crazy, hair on fire kind of guy, but also understanding, like, hey, there's at some point a line that we can't cross, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, luckily, it's a lot more veterans in the offensive line room as well, like with Cody, Dre, Colton, where I don't ever have to step over into that room and say anything. They kind of police it before I have to. But if I'm in a huddle, with him, and he's kind of too, routed up, I'm like, just relax, bro. Take a deep breath. We got a lot of football in front of us. I don't want you to blow your gasket in the second quarter, and we need you the most in the fourth quarter, and you got nothing left in the tank, But at the same time, I want him to be him.
You look at, we talked about the past 2 weeks, the success on the ground, bringing that to this Sunday back at Allegiant can be a tough task against a really good Steelers defense that I feel like every single year we just said, that's the adjective. They're just a really good defense. I mean, when you kind of take a look at them from front to back, obviously TJ Watt, the big guy there, but what kind of stands out to you about the way they play ball?
I mean, they play fast and they play hard. Like they're a team that they've kind of kept the nucleus together for a while in terms of like the coaching, the schematics, and things like that. So you can tell those guys understand what they're asked to do because they kind of play freely, and I think that's what you aspire to be as an organization, where you can kind of like keep a certain level of success together, where you can at least keep the pieces together. You were talking about, the coaching changes and stuff like that. For them, fortunately, they haven't had many coaches. They've only had 3 head coaches in the history of their organization, and they've been running the same defense, I want to say, since like 1992, which is amazing. That's what you want to get to. But when you can do that, you can start bringing in guys who fit that mold, and then those guys know what they're asked to do, and they play, balls to the wall. And, starting with TJ Watt, I played against him in college, man. I think he's, in my generation, probably one of the best DNs. Of course, I think our guys, just as good, if not better. Max Crosby, but on the next level, Patrick Queen, they brought him in. Orlando, I think last name is Roberts, number 50. He's a thumper. They set the tone. On all levels, they got someone who kind of sets the tone, and I think we have a great challenge in front of us. But I like what our guys are. The confidence and intentionality our guys have this week. We understand the challenge, and we know very well we can match that.
I think what's great about a game like this, it just kind of has that feel like that old school, nasty.
Big rivalry.
You have the two of the best uniforms in all of sports, right? Like just two historic franchises that have had so many great battles throughout the years, and this will be the next chapter on Sunday, which will be a blast.
It's a long-standing rivalry. We've seen the numbers. I think the Raiders have the all-time lead on them right now, and we're just trying to add to that column.
Yeah, it's 100%. But, one of the reasons that I love having you up here is that I feel like you're such a dude who has such varied interests, right? A guy who, yes, you're a football player. That's the day job. That's how we pay the bills. But you have so many other things going on. Mm-hmm. And we were going through the socials earlier, and you have such an exciting thing that you're cooking on right now, hit or miss. And just I'd love to know a little bit more the idea behind that, the vision behind that, and how that kind of came to be.
For sure. So hit or miss is a limited drop marketplace where I only make so many of whatever I'm dropping. That could be clothing. I make candles, actually. I have a 3D printer at home. I make a bunch of trinkets and stuff. I'm the king of side quests. I do a lot of things that kind of just challenge me to grow a little bit. I'm into like carpentry and wood shop, some one-on-one pieces that I make. But the whole purpose of hit or miss is, in life, we don't really get too many do-overs. And I think that's what the game of football has taught me, where if you don't make that play, you got to move on. You got to try to make the next one, or you're going to miss that one as well. So when I was just coming up with the idea of hit or miss, it's like either you hit on the piece or you don't. So I only make so many of each piece, and when they're gone, they're gone. They're never going to be produced or made again or dropped again. And I think it just kind of creates like an exclusivity to it a little bit. I've always liked how Kanye and Yeezy kind of like had their brand going, where he only made so many of them, and you gotta log on and get it. And if you don't get it, then it's gone. And it also just keeps it about the art. I've always said that I'm an artist who, by way of work, is an athlete. But football is just one stroke of my paintbrush. In my opinion, I feel like I'm spiritually more of an artist. So hit or miss keeps it more about the art, because I'm not pressed to make a bunch of things and keep up to a consumer demand by any means. I drop when I feel compelled to, I feel inspired to, and I just designed the first piece for hit or miss, which is a retro Nebraska jersey with the number 8 on the back, because I wore number 8 in Nebraska. I'm wearing number 8 again, and also number 8 is actually kind of connected to and represents infinity in the future. So it's kind of me paying homage to the past, present, and the future a little bit, with this piece right here. And that's why it's important to me. And of course, I want my skirts to get back to the good old days when they're winning. So it's kind of putting some good juju out there as well.
Big time. And I think what's great too is like you talk to everyone in this room, right? And I think at heart, like we're all creators, right? Like we like making stuff, whether it's TV shows, whether it's a podcast, whether it's, like you said, a one-of-one piece. Like I think at the end of the day, like I think our world would be a little better if we're all creating a little bit more. So shout out to you, man. Big time.
I appreciate it.
Well, dude, it was so good to have you up here. I appreciate you. I got to give you credit too, man. There are guys that say, hey, I'll come up after meetings or whatever, that don't come up. For the record, meetings are done. He came back up, man of his word. Ameer Abdullah said, I will come up after meetings, and he came up, so we appreciate you. Best of luck on Sunday. We'll catch you soon, all right, brother?
I appreciate you, man.